Hey there, boils and ghouls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly, and movie lovers from every corner of the world are going to love this episode. George and I were so happy to sit down with Craig Hammill, the CEO of the Secret Movie Club. Now, if you're an Angelino, where this, we're in Los Angeles, where this podcast is recorded, you've probably heard about this, because this is incredible. In fact, that's where George, I, and Garen went and saw Life Force, which was a life-changing experience. And we talk about everything. I mean, we as soon as I'm done blabbering about this intro, you're going to see that we go in hot on Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm telling you, we go from Raiders of the Lost Ark, we get some David Lynch in there, we talk about some Life Force, and hell, we even talk about the amazingness, the awesome sauce that is the Secret Movie Club, and how they've dealt with COVID. In fact, the only way I can describe how Craig has handled COVID, he basically took COVID like the Undertaker took mankind and just choke slammed it from the top of the Hell in a Cell. All right, and now they're doing the drive-in the drive-in clubs, which are absolutely awesome. You got to check it out. Go to secretmovieclub.com and get all the information about it. They have a lot of, I'm telling you, check it out now. They have a lot of screenings coming up that look really awesome, and it sounds like October is going to be the bee's knees. So enjoy the interview. And leave us a review on iTunes. You're going to love it. Here it is.
Well, you know what's funny is, and actually it's funny, I'm listening to it on my Zoom, which is what I probably always should have been doing. So I went to USC Film School, and in your middle year as a grad student, you pick a discipline. And even though I was a writer-director and much more personally fascinated with editing and cinematography, I decided to do sound because no one ever does sound. And I learned this really weird thing that I'm really grateful for. You can have a bad shot or something can look a little cheesy, but if your sound is bad, people will tune out of the movie. And it was a really weird lesson. Your dialogue and your sound and everything has to be crystal clear. So I've come to have a big respect for sound.
That's really interesting. Can you think of a movie that screwed that up?
Yeah, well, there's some there are a few interesting stories I know of that are weird But there's a Hao Xiao-sen film. Taiwanese filmmaker. I'm a huge fan of his. They're called, I think, 3 Times or 3 Ages. He made it about 15 years ago. And the first segment, it was 3 stories. The first story, they botched the weekend. And they came back. The sound was horrible. And what he decided to do was he just made it a silent film. And he just put subtitles or inner titles like the old silent movies. But when you watch it, it doesn't quite work because you're like, oh, did something go on with their sound? Is that why they're doing that? So he didn't completely hide the fact that they had a sound issue. But maybe a better story is, so I'm a huge Raiders of the Lost Ark fan. It's one of my favorite films of all time, in my top 15, easy. It's my number 11, but I don't even know what that means.
Indiana Jones started Secret Cinema, right?
That's right. Secret Movie Club's first movie was Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's so meaningful to me. And but the weird thing is, we did a class once where we watched the boulder scene at the beginning of Raiders when he gets the Inca idol. And, we're all loving it, da-da-da-da-da. Then they showed it without the sound. And it kind of looked ridiculous. And it was sort of funny to watch because you realize the ball's paper mache. You notice all the production design. Your eye, because your ear can't do anything. So you're like, oh. And it was a real lesson in how sound can sell a world completely, or bad sound will not sell the world.
That's so interesting. Maybe they screwed up the camera in Godzilla 2014, and that's why the whole movie's black. They did the silent movie.
We'll get the roar on point.
the sound will be amazing. We just won't show anyone anything. Impressive.
Was it Nick? Were you the one who saw Life Force?
Yeah, we both were.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we got to do a shout out to our friend. So Garen Sparks is he works in the industry. He's an incredible cinephile.
Oh,
I found him.
Garen's amazing.
Yeah, Garen's incredible. So we found him through Facebook. Oddly, our Facebook page posted one of my passion movies, which is the 77 The Car, the Brolin movie, right? So he reacted to the post, and we started talking, and I was like, you should come on the podcast. You're amazing. So we became friends, and he turned us on to what you're doing and the Life Force event. So we went, all three of us went together and saw it together, and it was incredible.
Oh, well, then we probably met. I was in my suit, and I probably did.
Well, that's where we saw you, and I thought, well, we gotta have this guy on the show. I was like, you don't have to play the movie; you just keep talking about movies.
Look, so I don't want to like fanboy too much, but that experience was my favorite movie going experience, and I had gone to some Universal marathons and some
a lot
other
of the
stuff
like the cinematic void stuff, like the Egyptian
right,
stuff,
exactly, and not to compare and contrast, but like the way it was introduced, it was like true raw passion with knowledge. The crowd was a different feel than I usually feel at those kind of events. Everything about it was
the music playing when we went to go sit down.
Yeah, everything was magic. Even the night, like the weather and the walking up on the Vista.
Well, the beautiful part is Garen drove us, and I saw all the street parking at the Vista, and I was like, we can come here all the time. This is so great.
So anyway, we did see you at the event. We were super impressed, and it was my favorite movie going event. It was tied with, I can't ever say this movie's name, Princess Mononoke at Cinespia. Yeah. And I had never seen it before. And there was something about that night that was magic for me, too. But those are my top two for the last couple of years.
Well, that is super kind of you to say. And I feel like I'm a debater in a presidential debate. I made like a number of notes. So I'm going to hit on everything we just talked about. I agree with you. Raiders is one of those movies that once you start it, you can't. It's like Goodfellas and sort of like we all have our own things. Godfather Part 2. Yeah. It could be 4 a.m. And you'd be like, yeah. I got to get up at 6, so I'm only going to watch the first 20 minutes of Godfather Part 2. And then
if it's Godfather Part 2, it'll be 4 a.m. eventually, whatever you started.
And so I'm totally down on that on Raiders. Thank you guys very much for coming to the event. Life Force, it's funny that we could do a whole thing on Life Force because that was one of the, and I want to say this the right way. So you guys, it strikes me, have seen tons of movies. I love movies. And you begin to realize, if you do a little sort of introspection or empirical thinking, that different movies are on different people's frequencies. And in fact, we're doing drive-ins right now, and I'm learning that again, relearning that. So if I show Raiders, everybody's going to love it. And you can enjoy it on a whole bunch of different frequencies, the Steven Spielberg frequency, the story, the Harrison Ford, whatever. When you show Life Force, some people are going to be like, what the F is this? And you're going to be like, no, listen, it's naked space vampires, Muppets, London. It gets crazy. Henry Mancini wrote like a legit dope score. It makes no sense. But when Tobe Hooper tells you it's like a gothic Hammer film, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of see that. But you just got to go with the experience. And that's a frequency I notice some people go with and other people resist. So we want to do those movies because I love those experiences. But I've noticed that you lose certain people when there's like, I want to say it the right way, but you enjoy it in a different way than just a pure one-to-one. You're sort of enjoying the subtext or the ridiculousness of it. Some people love that, and other people were like, why would I watch a bad movie? You're like, but it's not a bad movie if you love it.
Right, and you know, it's funny because I love that formulation of the frequencies. I think there's actually films that plow their own frequency forward and maybe bring some people in at adjacent frequencies that might not join along, right? And I think Life Force might be one of those because I'm not a huge space horror fan, right? So I've never been the biggest, like, Event Horizon. A lot of the peripheral movies are with, I love Alien 3, but for some reason it's not the sweetest spot of I like classic old horror and like fringe horror, foreign stuff and like whatever. So I didn't expect to be so taken by this movie and it really brought me along. Like it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, it's also one of those movies. I use this metaphor a lot and I've been using it, I don't know, since. So Secret Movie Club had an incarnation prior to its current incarnation where a group of friends and I in my 20s, I had this idea of let's show movies that a lot of people haven't seen. So you can't show Jaws. We all love Jaws, but you wouldn't show that. But show a movie that probably all your other friends hadn't seen, and the only rules were you had to pre-screen it for awesomeness, and if it sucked, no one was going to come to your apartment again. And I think we all had to drink. Those were like the rules. Right. And so I opened up with Russ Meyer's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which I love. I'm a huge Russ Meyer fan. But it's like a movie that a lot of my friends hadn't seen. So, And we came up with this formulation in that iteration of Secret Movie Club that if a movie went to 11, which I guess is a Spinal Tap reference, where you just go like, what? Then it's a great movie. And I feel like Life Force goes to 11 in like minute 5, and then it goes to 13. And then by the time there's a zombie apocalypse in London and it's like a love story, you're like, what?
That's totally right. Plus, the other thing is you're subconsciously picking up, like, it's like you're at a food truck and you've got the noise and the ambiance and the banging of the spatulas or whatever, and then they hand out like something good, and then they hand out something you would get at a 5-star restaurant and something good, like, because the music is so top notch.
That's a great.
And some of the other things happening in the movie are so top notch, and then some things are so ludicrous. Like, you're like, what is happening here?
And I think everybody talks. I mean, Life Force also. I don't know if we want to. I think you have to address the elephant in the room, which is that every adolescent boy who's told about Matilda May in that movie, when you see that movie and you're like, wait, is she ever in clothes? And like someone's like, she walks naked the whole movie home. You're like, what? And then, but the part that's hilarious is when she shapeshifts, like she can go into different people. And so then Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard, makes out with the guy at the like insane asylum, and you're like, wait, are they about to make out? Then it just keeps going places you would never expect.
Right, and that's sort of unsettling because it feels like there's an element of dangerousness in a movie that could go anywhere.
Totally.
Right.
It reminds me, I was listening to an interview with Kevin Smith when he was talking about how he wrote Red State. He was like, whenever I knew where it was going, I stopped writing. And then I'd pick up and go again. And Life Force is the only other movie I can compare to Red State that has that same like weird jazzy feel to it where you're just like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be weird, but I'm fucking here for it.
We're on a map and now we're not on the map.
Exactly.
So I'm fascinated by so Secret Movie Club started as this communal fun thing. I hope you saved those rules, by the way. That reminds me of Citizen Kane when he saves the rules at the beginning, because when this blows up, a huge thing.
You'll remind me.
Get drunk, pre-screened for awesomeness. Like, you need that sheet of paper now. But you've pivoted now, and now I'm fascinated because you're having this different communal experience at drive-ins, right? So has this been going on long enough for you to have learned some things from it? And what have you learned about group movie watching that's also capsulized in vehicles that we didn't know when this started?
So you hit on a number of interesting things, and I don't want to be. I'm very verbose, so I don't want to be like a Russian novel and be digressive. So I want to ABC.
I love Russian novels. So go
for it.
I do too. But so to answer your question, so the funny thing was that, Secret Movie Club started as a bunch of people in an apartment discovering movies you never knew existed, which I think is a great feeling. When a friend is like, check this movie out, and you're like, I had no idea movies like this existed. It's an amazing feeling. It's like being in somebody else's dream. Then when we started Secret Movie Club, the way it essentially has existed since April 2016, that story I've told a number of times, and I'll be just real quick, but I'm a movie maker. I'm a writer-director, and I had a bunch of friends who had made features, and I asked them for advice, legitimate advice, and they were like, we thought making a movie was 100% of the game, the writing it, the directing it, the editing it, and they said it's not. That's 49% of the game. You're not even halfway through the marathon. 51% of the game is marketing it, distributing it, exhibiting it, and getting at least enough of a response that someone will give you money for a second movie. This was weirdly the thing all of my friends told me. That was their big thing. And I thought, okay, so I want to learn about that. How can I do it and feel good? Like feel that I'm not I like going to the dark side or whatever. And I thought, so I thought about this thing I had done with my friends in apartments. And when I was at USC, I used to have people come speak. So we had Michael Mann speak about Heat, and John Woo speak about The Killer, and Robert Wise, before he died, came in to speak about West Side Story, and Russ Meyer came in to speak about Faster Pussycat Go Kill. So I thought, okay, I'll show movies I love, and I'll learn about exhibition distribution and audience building, but I'm going to keep the ethos that had sort of drove me at USC, drove me with my friends, as you were just pointing out, George, because that's really, really key, because I think people can smell BS. In fact, I know they can. And I think the older I get, I'm 43, the more I realize the absolute importance of being an honest person and a truthful person. And that's, I feel my karmic thing is really on all levels, because sometimes it's hard to be upfront with people, but I think that people can smell sincerity and they can smell BS. And you got to, so we did that and it grew, and I'm going to skip that whole story to get to what you're saying. So, we grew, showing these movies at the Vista and then expanding to other, we did movie palaces. Now we have a 99 seat theater where we can do archive films and avant-garde stuff. Anyway, COVID hits, right? Cut forward, boom. 2001 match cut, COVID, boom. So COVID hits. And, I'm a mutt. I don't know about you guys. I'm predominantly Irish Catholic and Russian Jew, which actually all my team says, you always say that. And I go, I guess it's just something that really is like on my mind constantly. So my dad was
a full name, George Patrick Healy. I can empathize with you.
There you go. And so there we go. Mom's Catholic, dad's Jewish. But I think Irish Catholic, Russian Jew, you don't really get depressed. You just get kind of angry. And you just get this thing where you're like, F this. And you're a little crazy too. So you're like, F this COVID. Like, I'm not going to sit around. And so initially we went to virtual screenings where we were doing these Netflix watch parties. Mm-hmm. And they were fun, but they were really only working at about 20 people. More than that, it was like overwhelming. And it's not like we really had that demand. But so, I was like, we got to get to drive-ins. We got to get to drive-ins because that's just from a business point of view and what we do. You got to move forward. You got to adapt. You've got to be dynamic. And I know all those things, believe all those things. So anyway, I made all these calls. And like a lot of things that happened in my life, the first people I went to didn't respond. The first thing I wanted to do was go to a permanent drive-in. So I wanted to go to we're in Southern California. I know you guys have a huge audience. So here in Southern California, the only drive-ins that still exist, ironically, for Southern California being the movie and car capital of the country, are Vineland, which is in the City of Industry, and the Paramount, which is in East LA, and then the Mission Tiki, which is out in Claremont. So they're like only three or four functioning drive-ins. None of them responded to me. And that ate up about a month and a half of please someone talk to me. Then through luck, someone in my building was like, you should talk to this guy. They blow up a screen. They were showing on a college campus. He has all the equipment. Now they can't do a college campus because schools are shut down. And he and I talked, and it was very fortuitous. His name's Ralph Matamoros. He runs Electric Dusk Drive-In, which used to be at Atwater Village. And Ralph and I were looking for a partner to sort of share the cost, bring in the audience. And it really worked out because we could do this, but we each were taking on 50% of the risk, if that makes sense, rather than 100%. And money being so tight, that was very, and also we could split the duties 50-50. Anyway, George, I hope you have a judicious editor, but I'm getting to the main point. So, so we started to do these things in Glendale, which is still our home. There's a Sears in Glendale, and in this weird indicative way, the Sears had closed down, but the parking lot was still there. And it's a great lot, and we put up the screen, and we started at the beginning of August, so we've been doing it about 2 months. And to answer your question now directly, I have learned some really important things. One fascinating thing is audiences are different depending on the venue. So when I was doing the Vista, where you guys saw Life Force. So for the audience, the Vista is one of the last single screen theaters in Los Angeles. It was built in 1920. It's built on where they shot the D.W. Griffith movie Intolerance. So when you walk into that theater, you're like literally standing on ground zero of Hollywood cinema. It's where Chaplin shot movies, Mack Sennett, D.W. Griffith, Walt Disney.
That's crazy.
No, that's why you have that energy. And I don't want to convert people. I'm not here to proselytize, but I am a believer in kind of weird energies and picking up on things. And everybody loves the Vista. And one of my theories is, well, you're standing on hallowed ground. You're standing on sacred ground. This is where the American film industry started. And so it's a 370-seat theater. It's beautiful. You guys know it. You've been in there, but it's like the old theaters. It's got a lot of great work. Anyway, there I was showing movies at midnights and matinees, and we built up a real movie making and movie loving audience, which is why Garen took you to Life Force. So there I could show a Ukrainian movie like The Tribe. I don't know if you guys have seen it. All signed. It's amazing. It's a movie from a few years back about a school of deaf kids, and it gets real violent and sexual. It's NC-17. Sorry, someone's calling me. To wrap up the story, I could take a chance at the Vista because of our business model, and it's important. I want to show movies that, okay, maybe I'm only going to get 30 people, but I feel if you're, as a filmmaker and as a organization, if you're just playing the hits, I feel like it eventually feels like a cash grab or not very inspiring. Right. If it's just the same 10 movies all the time and you're just like John Carpenter's The Thing, Steven Spielberg's Jaws, you know what? It's just, there's only so much enjoyment you can get out of a greatest hits album. Yeah. But what's funny is that when I did drive-ins, it was not our Vista audience. It is a lot of young people, college kids, people on dates, families. And so the thing that I've really learned is it's like how Frank Lloyd Wright did architecture. You go, okay, these drive-ins are families coming out, couples who haven't been able to have a date night in 8 months coming out, friends getting together. So I've tried to program things like we did Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love. We did. I'm trying to think. We did Drive. We did Repo Man. We're definitely trying to thread a needle of great, interesting movies and also just movies we all love. Like we did Mad Max Fury Road, which I think is a masterpiece, but everybody's seen it. We did do Jaws. We did Tremors. We also do fun stuff.
You didn't think after 6 months of lockdown that a couple's first date should be a Ukrainian death slaughter film?
Neither did my partner.
Good choice.
I've had some conversations with my partner where I'll pitch him something and he's a very diplomatic guy. Ralph's very diplomatic, but you know how you're engaged, I'm married, we've all been in relationships. You just know when you tell someone something, if they're really into it or not, even if you just know right away. With Ralph, I'll pitch something and he'll be like, oh, I can see that. And I'm like, oh, yeah. He's not into it.
Ironically, I can see that means you're never going to see it.
But there you go. So to answer your question, maybe even more specifically, George, I am finding myself programming with Ralph. Ralph and I are like Ralph, we just did musicals. Ralph was the one who wanted to do Purple Rain, although I love Purple Rain. I would have programmed Purple Rain as well. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. But so Ralph would choose Purple Rain, and then he and I would do Dirty Dancing. He wanted to do Dirty Dancing, so I balanced that with Grease. He wanted to do Purple. We agreed on Purple Rain, La La Land. Then I chose Tommy and the Wall. So. What we're trying to do is build identities for different days. So maybe Thursdays are the cult night, and then Fridays, Saturdays are the date nights, and then Sundays are the family night.
That's really cool. But so that's the programming side of things, which you obviously are massively gifted at. But I'm curious because I noticed something weird, and I think I don't even know how to ask this question, so forgive me. But
ask, please. Nothing.
So
ask away.
The way I'm thinking about this is, you have this ethos of get off your phone, which I really appreciate. I feel like David Lynch did the same thing when he released The Return. He was like, "Don't tweet during this damn thing; just watch it, experience it, etc." But when I went to the Life Force event, my one regret is I don't have like a visual reminder. Nick does; it's behind us, but I don't have a visual reminder of He bought the Vertigo poster.
Nice. I love it. That we're gonna redo the office. My one stipulation is we work around that.
He bought that at that event. But so I don't have a visual like kind of representation because it's that experience in the dark with a group of people. I went to your Facebook page and I was looking at some really cool in-car shots of people who dressed up for the event. And now they have kind of like that forever moment saved because they're not in the dark in that shot, right? So I'm wondering if the drive-in experience, how does that affect the communal experience? Are you trying to build a communal kind of?
So that's a great question. So that, just like the programming, is idiosyncratic. So with the drive-ins, we have to be very on the COVID rules and regs or we would get shut down. So like, unfortunately, last weekend I had to go around to like a bunch of people who were talking outside their cars, and I had to ask politely, could you please get back in your cars? We can't really have people loitering around the parking lot or even getting out of their cars and talking even in masks, because health told us you can't do that. So what ends up happening is I've tried to adapt the principles of what we did at the Vista for the drive-in. I'll give you examples. So when you come to the Vista, I would be at the table and the team would be at the table. We'd check you in and we'd say hello or we'd have a little chat. So at the drive-ins, I actually check every car in. And I say hello, I got my mask on. And that's where the photos come from too. If I see a couple and I'm like, oh, you guys look amazing, or this car's great, or would you mind posing? And they're like, no one ever says no to me. They're always like, instead they're like, oh, could you tag me? I'm at like basic Barbie bitch. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got it. So that's that adaptation. When we show the movie, I go up there and I give an intro, but I also know that the audience's attention span is different than it was at the Vista. They've already been in their car for an hour because they were parked. They really came for the movie. So I try to keep it to 3 to 4 minutes. I tell them what's coming up. I give them some trivia about the movie like I would do at the Vista. I thank them. I try to personalize it. I thank Ralph. I let them know who we are. I don't know that I completely see it this way, but are either of you guys, I think this will make sense whether or not you're LA natives. Are either of you LA natives?
We're both from Ohio.
Oh, sweet. Where in Ohio?
I'm Cleveland.
Springfield.
Okay. My stepdad lived in Ada when he was a teenager.
Oh, cool.
Up north. Mm-hmm. So and my stepmom, actually, folks divorced and married 2 Ohioans. My stepmom was from Youngstown.
Okay. I was driving distance from Youngstown.
So there you go. So I know Ohio a little bit from Ada and Youngstown. So here in LA, and you see this in the movies, there was this era from the 30s to about the late 70s, and the only thing that exists of great restaurants, and the only thing that exists from that era now is Musso and Frank's, which Tarantino name-checked in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But there used to be the Trocadero when the Ambassador Hotel was up, a place called Scandia's on Sunset, a place called Chasen's in the Valley. And anyway, there was a guy, Dave Chasen, who owned Chasen's, who he would like greet you at the door. And whether you were Jack Lemmon or you were just this, like my granddad, who was a businessman who lived in Granada Hills. Oh, Ed Brown, how you doing? Oh, Jack Lemmon, how you doing? And everybody loved that personalized Chasen's experience. They were hobnobbing with stars, but they liked the food. And also Dave Chasen knew who you were. Right. And my granddad, my papa, Ed Brown, who passed away just a few years ago at 91 or 90, I think. He was one of these businessmen. He was from Minnesota. And he would go he sold dog food. That was really the company that eventually, blew up for him. He did a lot of jobs, and then Nutro Dog Food was his company. He would go into every pet food store, get to know the owner, shake their hand. How are you? What do you need? He'd personalize it. And that really made a deep impression on me, which is that, yes, we love movies. Movies are a communal experience, but it's also a weird way, I think, for introverted folks and shy folks and all of us to be among other people and to be social and have a group experience. And so our MO at Secret Movie Club is getting to know you, and not in a BS way either. Just like We want you here. Like,
Yep.
we can't do this if you're not here. How are you doing? How's that movie? How's the script you're writing?
And for introverts, the override, because being introverted in public a lot of times feels like pressing a gas pedal and a brake pedal at the same time. Like, right, so like, but the override is you're so excited about what you're about to experience, right?
Yeah.
That it overrides the introversion and the awkwardness, and it is just a great experience.
And it's very funny because at the Vista, I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but this is something that's obsessed me a little bit, is we would show movies at midnight, and God willing, we'll go back there again and show movies at midnight. So I got to meet a lot of people, and I had this realization that movies are for many people who are not super social or might have social issues. It's a way for them to get out, to go somewhere, and you just hit on it, George, socialize and be safe at the same time. They can engage with the audience if they want. They can laugh and have the communal, but they could also just sit in their seat with their popcorn, and people know the rules of a movie that you don't necessarily, you're not going to, you could just leave that person alone. And I've met a lot of folks, and it really dawned on me that movies have been a lifeline and an outlet for folks who aren't going to go to a party, for folks who maybe are not dating constantly, for folks who live alone or whatever. And I've been there myself. I've lived alone. I've not dated. I've gone to the movies, and I've loved it. So,
Sure.
But getting back to your drive-in question, the interesting things we've noticed are we socialize with people in the cars when we check them in. People honk their horns instead of applaud, which is really funny. So if they like something, you hear the honking of the horn. So we'll ask what movies they want to see. You'll hear the honking. Ralph will ask, where you're from. You'll hear that. One of my favorite things is, I haven't felt like this since I was a waiter at 19. I'm on my feet 7 hours. It's grueling, but I'm losing my dad weight. I got a 3-year-old.
Good for you.
Yeah, my wife's all into it. She's like, this job has done wonders. But I'm constantly walking up and down the lot, which is kind of like walking up and down past people, and you hear people laugh at the jokes. We did Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake a few weeks ago. And there's this moment late in the movie where they're escaping in the tricked out vans, and one guy has the chainsaw, and they hit something, and he saws someone in half. If you remember that,
Yeah, of course.
10 cars in a row, you heard all these people simultaneously be like, "Oh fuck!" and they all like all the cars bucked at the same time, and so you saw all these cars go. So you see these weird Spielbergian physical representations of the audience responding, and that communal experience, George, you're talking about. And I've said this a lot, but I'm going to end on this part of the question, which is, I sometimes get people, and I hear news and journalists and stuff being like, "This is the death of the movie theater." COVID has killed the movie theater. And first off, I think it's always funny when someone declares the death of anything, because it's almost never quite right. I think everyone
if
should
Nietzsche couldn't pull it off, you're not going to pull it off. That's right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think you should be a little more humble, because you never know what the future holds. I have 200 records that you can't see because I love vinyl. So everyone thought vinyl was dead, and now nobody has cassette tapes or 8-track.
Right.
But what I've noticed at the drive-ins is, we've been doing, this weekend looks a little slow, but up until this weekend, we've been essentially selling out. And what that tells me is people could stay at home. They could watch this movie on Netflix or HBO Max or Amazon, but they decided to pay quite a bit of money and invite their friend and bring food in a car and go where there are other people in cars, because somehow that experience is more enjoyable than watching it on your own in your apartment by yourself. So I've actually had a lot of optimism that when we get through this, and we will get through it, people are always going to gravitate to communal experiences and community experiences. It's just fundamental somehow to who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the monolith shows up in 2001, everyone doesn't go into separate caves and sketch it, they all go, "What the hell is this?" And gather around it. Like, you want to experience that kind of. That's amazing. That's an amazing pivot. I'm kind of jealous because you're soaking up the whole communal experience, walking up and down the rows, like you're getting the full read on the communal experience. That's really cool. I wish it could be recorded somehow because that's really fascinating.
It would be. We should, if we, we're going to do this now for a few more months at least. We're going to do October. We hope November, but October for sure. And, it would probably be a fun thing to show a movie is going to get a lot of a horror movie that's going to get a lot of audience reaction. And maybe just set up 3 cameras or 4 cameras and just let them run for 2 hours and see if we capture something.
That's I think that's awesome. Speaking of, we're going into horror season, right? So this is, I'm assuming you're programming a bunch of, or you have the idea for a bunch of horror. What is a film that a lot of people haven't seen that can be good for this season, and then maybe even past that for like going into Thanksgiving and Christmas? What take horror fans through the rest of the year, since that's primarily who listens to our show?
Got it. We are now. I have to have this conversation with my partner, and Ralph with Electric Dust Drive-In. And I've learned a lot from Ralph. Ralph had been doing drive-ins for 9 years. I'd never done drive-ins. So my audience in my head is my Vista audience, or not but the Vista audience, or the $1 Million Theater, or the indoor audience. And I'd pitch certain things, and Ralph would be like, I don't. And then other things, he's like, absolutely. And I was always like, why? Because we did American Vacation and Weird Science. And I love Weird Science. And I'd always wanted to show Weird Science. But I thought Ralph was going to say, oh, well, that's kind of not as well known. But Ralph was like, absolutely. And Weird Science killed. It sold out. But there are other movies I've pitched. He was a little nervous about Punch Drunk Love. And we did well. We almost sold out there. But he was like, I don't really remember that. That movie's kind of like a weird movie, right? I was like, wow.
Unlike Weird Science, which is totally normal.
Right. But I get where he's coming from. Yep. Ralph Ralph loves Top Gun. Ralph loves Armageddon. Ralph loves, and I'm saying this in a really important way. That's a lot of the world. Yeah. They want to see a big, fun movie, and Ralph has that instinct, and I've learned a lot from it. Now, we're programming October, and we want it to be an all horror October. I've said this a lot, but October, in my mind, has always, in a weird way, been the beginning of our year, because we have a lot of people that come. Horror, everybody loves horror or spooky or Halloween. We're hoping that continues this year, but you never know. People have said it. Just because it happened in the past never means you're guaranteed it's going to happen again. But to give you an example, we're almost certainly going to be doing Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at the Sears parking lot. So Fridays and Saturdays will be double features or double bills. Sundays will be family friendly. So like our Sundays, to give you an example, we're looking at E.T., we're looking at Hocus Pocus, we're looking at The Addams Family, Nightmare Before Christmas, Coco. So, we're looking at movies that your 3-year-old could come see, have a fun time.
I fucking love Coco. Oh, such a good movie.
And Coco's great because I love Halloween, and I love the way that America celebrates it. But I'm married to a Latina. My wife, Martha, is Salvadoran. And the Day of the Dead, which is really what we should be doing, which is really what Halloween is in a way, Latinos and Hispanics still think about death. They think about people who have died. They really engage with it, which I don't think Americans do as much, to our detriment. I think we avoid death and thoughts of death. And I think that's been a little detrimental to the American
psyche. We avoid
psyche.
Serious thinking altogether. So the category is bigger than that.
I got faith. I got faith in us, but I think I have faith. But I would say, but in that sense, I definitely think you see an American avoidance of death, or an American avoidance, and you can see it in how we try to stay young, and
Sure.
plastic surgery and yada yada yada. And but Coco, I'm sorry, the thing great about Coco is it introduces an American audience to the Day of the Dead, and this idea that this boy is learning about his family members who died and dealing with death that's imminent within the family. And it's a fun movie, and I love it. It's about Mexican cinema too. So anyway, there's the family stuff. Yep. Now, what we want to do Fridays and Saturdays are more the hardcore fun. So, some of the things I think we might do would be everything from Friday the 13th part 1 and then the final chapter. So do the 2 Friday the 13th to, something like maybe 2 Stephen Kings where you go The Shining and Pet Sematary, to, maybe movies from the 70s, scuzzy movies from the 70s, but that really rocked people's brains, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Phantasm, to, maybe doing the Raimi Evil Dead 2 Army of Darkness, doing it all in one night, and then going to sort of modern takes on horror that get you thinking, or, like Get Out or Cabin in the Woods, to anthology horror like Trick or Treat and Creepshow. So hopefully,
Nick will lose his mind if you do Trick or Treat.
I'm running to that Sears parking lot.
That's the very first horror thing I discovered about him when I met him, was that he has an inordinate love for anthology films, which are the underappreciated branch of horror.
Yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, George and Nick. So, Nick, we really should be asking you. I've only seen a few of them, but in my research, I've realized have been horror anthologies really since, Dead of Night is from the 40s, I think, and that's a horror anthology. And It's just funny, they've been going on for a while.
Well, being a 90s kid, I grew up with Courage the Cowardly Dog, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps. So just growing up, it was like, you like short horror? You ain't got a choice.
Yeah, you were formatted for it.
Like, this is what you're going to get.
Right.
You're going to like it.
Right.
And then we'll give you some movies.
Right. It would be a blast to see Body Bags at a
That would be
drive.
great.
Wow, but you nailed it right from the start. Trick or Treat is one of your favorite, and Creepshow is your favorite.
Oh, and it's like the best fall movie. Like,
Yeah,
you smell
totally.
Trick or Treat.
Yeah, totally.
You feel the chilly fall wind, like,
That's a no-brainer. Let me hit you with a curveball question real quick. If you had the opportunity to program a couple episodes of TV shows instead of movies, what would you pick? Or have you done it already?
Well, we've done a little TV. We did Twilight Zone last October, and that's the old school Rod Serling Twilight Zones are just classic short films, classic short stories.
And we need a Rod Serling right now.
It would be, but it's like everything. You get a Rod Serling every 30 years.
That's true.
You got to be. It's like you saying we need another Muhammad Ali or we need another James Joyce, and you're like, yeah, they come around about every 50 years. So.
Good point. I'll wait for Haley's comment.
But TV I love. So you're asking about TV now. George, is the question if I was doing horror TV or any TV?
Well, let's do one of each. So if you're doing for October, and then just an episode you would love to drop that would blow people's minds, or you think would be fun.
So I have to get this out right at the front of the TV. So I love TV. I have TV ideas creatively I want to do. But because I'm realizing more and more as I get older how short life is, I tend to really lean into movies. I love the 2 hour and a half or whatever experience. I get it. The idea of committing to 50 to 100 episodes of something, I respect it. I think it's the wave of the future, and it's the way people used to read novels. It's why novels are so long. It's not, but I'm more of a 2 hour. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have this singular, concentrated experience. So I just want to let people know that I have huge holes. Yep. That being said, I would definitely in October program, Twilight Zone and David Lynch directed Twin Peaks episodes would be top of my list. I think. I'm also a fairly big fan. I would even go check it out. But you could do fun stuff from the '60s, like The Outer Limits or Dark Shadows. I always love TV that has developed a cult following. I mean, you could really look at great episodes of Doctor Who or The Prisoner, or you could do any of those things. But in terms of not being Halloween themed, my favorite TV shows, and for whatever it is, Twin Peaks, I've already said, but it is Twin Peaks, Twilight Zone. I also love really absurd comedy. So I'm actually a huge fan of comedy of Adult Swim's Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, which like I would probably pick the best Aqua Teen Hunger Force episodes, but I've shown them to my wife and Martha, and even though she gets it and she gets it, I love absurd humor. She's sometimes been like, "What is this about?" I'm like, "Okay, there's a really malicious milkshake who lives with a codependent box of fries and kind of a simple-minded but good-hearted uncooked thing of meat. They got a New Jersey neighbor who's a real perv named Carl." And she's like, "What are you talking?" I'm like,
I tried that with Too Many Cooks, and I got as far as you did.
I've had slight success with Adult Swim. I got my fiance Alex to accidentally quote Steve Brule while she was getting interviewed by the news. she had a web series get developed, and they asked her about it, and she went, "It's so easy." And she went, "Did I just quote Steve Brule?" I was like, "Yes."
You laid a trap?
You sure did.
Well, I got a question, George. Too Many
Yes.
Cooks. Did you like it or did you have to stop?
I had to show it to everybody. As soon as I saw it, I had to show it to everybody. My dream would be if I would crawl across broken glass if Secret Movie Club did Twin Peaks Return Episode 8 at a drive-in. Yeah, like I would lose my mind because that was my favorite hour of television. My two favorite TV shows are Sopranos and Twin Peaks.
Well, so we are actually, that's in the works. Now I don't know if we're going to do it at the drive-in, but
Right.
all the David Lynch directed Twin Peaks episodes as a series and we may even be able to get the editor of Twin Peaks who edited those episodes.
God.
So
I'm gonna lose my mind.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think when people ask me what the greatest hour of television was, one of them, I mean, I'd want to be humble about it because I think if you think there are some Cheers episodes I think are brilliant.
Sure.
There's a Cheers episode, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, and I'm dating myself, but I was a little kid. It was when Woody got married, and it was all in the kitchen of the mansion.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's this. It's actually weirdly the atypical Cheers episode. So Cheers always took place in the bar.
Right.
But there's this one episode where Woody's marrying. She was a character who had been on it for years. They're finally getting married. Kelly, she's rich. It's at her house, which is a mansion, and it's a farce. So it all takes place in the kitchen of the mansion because the Cheers gang are the caterers,
Right.
and everything goes nuts. And it's not that usual mix of Cheers, hilarious comedy and character study.
Oh, it was Cheers doing Moliere. That's crazy.
It's Cheers doing Moliere or Faulty Towers.
Oh wow! I gotta see that.
You got it's the and I think all the Cheers are on Hulu.
Right.
So, and speaking of that, I would show Faulty Towers. I love South Park. But going to what you were saying, Monty Python. So real quickly, I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
Twin Peaks: The Return, Episode 8. I've told this story many times. I was watching that, and I know when I'm really into something because I lean forward. I mean, if something really, I'm like, what? So I don't want to ruin it for anybody, so I'm going to speak very vaguely because you need to experience it, like you're saying, George. So the first 10 minutes of it happen, and they're amazing.
Right.
And you're like, it's already way weird in the first 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Then Nine Inch Nails does a song, which ironically is like the most boring part of the movie.
A full-on performance.
Full-on performance.
Right.
And it's a great song, and they're killing it.
Yep.
Then something happens.
Yep.
And it cuts, and there's a title of where we are, and I leaned forward. And I leaned forward for the next 50 minutes.
Well, your ears are brave if you lean forward for what's about to happen at that moment you lean forward.
I just kept watching.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen that often. We're like, am I seeing what I'm seeing?
Well,
How long is he going to commit to this? He's
Right.
going to commit to it for 50 minutes? That's amazing.
Well, so let me date myself, right? So like Twin Peaks was a formative, like it was the first time that I felt like someone snuck in under the edifice of culture and got something game-changing in it.
Totally.
but also-
on network TV.
Yeah, incredible, right? But so that the reveal of Laura Palmer's killer, that episode is the most terrifying moment of TV I have ever experienced until episode 8. And the span of time between those two is absurd, right? Like and up to that, and I'm a huge fan of The Return, but like up to that, you had, I mean, it starts with that massacre cube scene, right? So like the whole series starts with, so you have some terrifying moments and some hilarious moments, but it was like a transcendent, like I was talking to Nick because he knew how excited I was the return was happening, and that episode was so unsettling. We were like, are we going to sleep or like stay up for 24 hours after this or what? It was an incredible experience.
The only thing I remember is loving the episode, but then I think it was like 2 months ago or something like that. I was going on some kind of Spotify radio playlist or something like that, and then the victims of
the Serenity for the victims of Hiroshima. Yeah,
it played. I didn't know because I had it like on my like it's a different monitor or something like that, and all of a sudden I was like, no,
not re-experiencing.
Not doing it. Still can't do it.
But it would be so remarkable to experience that in a communal experience like a Vista or like you're saying. Like it's incredible that you picked that.
Well, and we're talking about horror.
Yep.
I think that Twin Peaks, specifically the movie Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, is as close to pure horror as David Lynch ever got. And even though all of his stuff is unsettling, and, just to drop some trivia, you guys probably know this, episode 8, there's a story, which again, I don't want to really give too much of it away, but it involves an insect. And there's an insect, and then we meet these two little not little kids, but sort of adolescent kids, 14-year-olds walking and talking. That Lynch, if you study Lynch's life, The Return is his autobiography.
Yeah.
He wrote his autobiography as the 3rd season of Twin Peaks, and the first movie he was going to make before Eraserhead was a movie, I believe, called Garden Back, about an adolescent girl who swallows a bug. And when I saw it, I was like, is he finally making Garden Back?
Right?
Yeah, and I couldn't believe. And so when you watch it, the Cube thing to me is him referencing the Lost Highway era.
Sure.
You can sort of feel as you go through The Return.
It's tonally different. Yeah,
it's tonally different. He's here I am in this, here I am in
Here's
that.
Mulholland Drive shows up. Yep.
That's right. When we get to the end of this series, and then it also goes beyond. I mean, I tell people my favorite film of 2017 was Twin Peaks: The Return, because I don't want to even say, and I'm not going to, because people should just see it. And you do have to watch all 18 episodes, and some of them work, some of them not as much. But although I loved every one, but when you get to the end of the series, the very end, and I don't want to say what it is, but when you get to those last 10, 20 minutes, and you realize, oh, this is the last 10, 20 minutes, like I thought it was going to be something different, but this is what it is. He goes beyond what he's ever done into like some new territory that's even more unsettling.
Yeah, because that might be the other most terrifying moment of the TV is what it literally ends on. That sound and what happened there was just so spooky and bizarre. And that's the thing is, I think one of the things that because it kind of it goes along with what you're sort of a part of what you're creating with Secret Movie Club is it's funny when you referenced Tarantino, because I think one of the powerful things about the dynamic between Brad Pitt's character and Leo's character in Once Upon a Time is they know each other and they don't, right? And they're friends and they're not. But you can tell that the payoff, and I think it's one of the quietest payoffs in a modern movie, is the payoff is when they're watching the TV together. I'm mesmerized by that scene because that shouldn't work. We shouldn't be watching two characters watch a little black and white TV and it'd be like a thrilling moment in a movie, right? So they know each other and they don't. David Lynch, I feel like, is a filmmaker you can only know and not know simultaneously, right? And as much as you know him, you also don't know him, right? Which is, and I feel like that really suits itself to the Vista Theater kind of experience. You know the people you're in the theater with. You suspect they have the same enthusiasms and passions you do, right? Because you're all there, right? But you don't know how they're going to react to it. You don't know what brought them to it. You don't know if this is a sentimental favorite movie and it's something that got them when they were young, or it's something that it's like their very favorite movie of all time and like whatever. So you know you're with people that are sort of like you, but also not. I think that's a really cool element of what you're doing because it's built into a lot of what you do.
Well, there's this great quote by Willa Cather, the author, and she said, the heart of another is a dark forest always, no matter how close it has been to one's own. Yeah. And I have always, when I heard that, it was a little startling to me because I'm very family oriented. I'm one of 7. My whole life has been cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and everybody in a house, and obviously, fights and this and that, but we're essentially a good, tight family. Thank God. I'm very grateful. But as I get older, I feel that quote is important. Yes, we know people, and absolutely, I want to say this the right way, but it's important to be humble that people have mysteries in them.
Yes.
And that you always have to allow that a person could behave inconsistent with how they behaved before, or a person may have a mystery or a secret or multitudes that you don't know. And it's a humility. And I think that our greatest movie makers tap into that. And I think David Lynch is one of them, where his characters have multitudes. And whether it's Kyle MacLachlan in The Return, or Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive, or
or
Patricia
Naomi Watts in The Return.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, any of them, you kind of know them, but then he intentionally is telling you like explicitly, but you also don't.
Yes.
And there's something very powerful about that to me, that we contain multitudes, and we need to be humble about that.
And to your point about people doing things unexpected, that there's a story that Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote, I think, called Wakefield, and a lot of it. He was a writer's writer, so a lot of writers have named that as one of their favorite stories, or one of the most chilling stories ever written of all time, and they made a terrible movie out of it. But the idea is this guy is living his life, and then one day he's 45, whatever. He walks out of his house, he leaves, and he vanishes on his family, his kids, his wife, just vanishes. And it turns out at the end of the story that he went like 4 city blocks over and just took on a new identity and lived the whole rest of his life there, like 3 miles away, right? And there's no explanation. It's just terrifying. But people can do unexpected things, right? And that's part of the magic of just programming, like what you're doing, is you can wake up the next morning and be like, oh, what's Secret Movie Club doing for Christmas? And sure, there's going to be like, oh, yeah, they're doing National Lampoon, they're doing whatever, but they might also be doing,
Brazil. It's a Christmas movie.
Spoiler. right. Exactly right. And that feeling of knowing it and not knowing it, I think is like, it's just a really magical thing, right?
Well, thank you. Also the one of the things, and I want to say this the right way, because I'm not here to proselytize at all. My dad was a Zen Buddhist, and I lived with a Muslim family, and I actually am I tell people I'm very spiritually promiscuous. I actually, I take things from the Bhagavad Gita, and I take things from the Bible and the Quran and Lao Tzu and the Tao, and
Necronomicon,
no Necronomicon. I am Catholic. I don't mess with that.
The line has been drawn.
Oh no, there is a line. We've had this conversation at Secret Movie Club. I am never gonna look in a mirror and say something 3 times. You're never gonna get me tempting the devil. And we've got people on our team who are like, the devil doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, that's great for you, homie. I'm not selling my soul. I'm not invoking anything. I'm not chancing it. And now what I mean by that is I don't want to be too cute by half. My ideas aren't that some cloven hoof thing is going to appear. But I'm not, it's why I love Raiders. At the end of Raiders, Indiana Jones, even though he's a skeptical scientist for all intents and purposes, has the humility to know the Ark contains something transcendent. Yep. And he turns to Marion and he says, close your eyes. And everybody else, the Nazis and Belloc, they are not humble in front of the transcendent, and their faces melt and they blow up.
Right.
And so that's just my default policy is I'm going to be, we're alive for what, 80 years? And we think we know the whole universe? And we're like,
it's absurd.
It's absurd. Yeah. And you're going to sit there and be like, well, I know for sure there's nothing transcendent in the universe. I know for sure there's no, I don't. Like, that's like good on you, but I'm going to be humble about that stuff.
Well, and that's also a little insulting to the movies themselves. If the movies are doing justice to certain figures, you want to be terrified. We reviewed the Devil Daniel Webster.
That was great.
And after watching it, I was like, nope, no deal with the devil. He's terrifying.
No, I don't want to have to go to court with Napoleon.
Exactly right. But anyway,
That should just be what you tell your kids. Look, you don't want to go to court with Napoleon. Just don't deal with the bill.
Yeah, he's a huge pain to the whole world.
But I'm sorry I got sidetracked. But what I wanted to say, see, this is the digressiveness. I love showing Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men as a Christmas movie. And I've had people be like, a Christmas movie? I'm like, it's a Christmas movie. And people will be like, no, what do you do? It's great. But I'm like, okay, there's a world in which no children are being born anymore. And then there's a woman who is suddenly miraculously pregnant with a child who's going to redeem the world. Where is she introduced? In a barn, in a manger. What is the first thing that Clive Owen says when he sees the pregnant woman? Jesus. He's Joseph. He's lost a child. He's not the father of the child. He shepherds her to a boat called the Hope or whatever it is. And while they're being shepherded and he's rowing out, they're playing a mass.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Right. So, like, when people are like, I'm like, look, those might not be your whistles. I get that you didn't go to Catholic school or mass on Sundays.
Sure.
Word. But when you watch Children of Men, you're like, wow, they found a way to talk about these themes and these myths and these things that really move us in a new, interesting way. So that's like a Christmas movie too, along with It's a Wonderful Life.
That's
was
a great
really long
suggestion
story.
for a Christmas movie
like
around that. Yeah, for that, because I love Children of Men too, and that's really interesting. That people don't catch that when it's a thriller. You can, like, when Mother ! Came
Mother!
out, people knew that they were in an allegory, right? Because there was nothing was happening. So it was like you were saying before, where your senses get heightened, where you pick up the sound, that when the sound's gone, you're picking up the visual paper mache errors, right? Like your brain pivots. So but Children of Men is such a propulsive thriller. People don't catch they're in an allegory, right?
Which is, I think, what makes it so good.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a conversation. We could be here for hours and hours, but we all decide what kind of films we respond to and what we like or whatever, and what how we'd want to make movies. And I always feel that I don't feel that film is a medium for lecturing people. I really don't. And I don't think that film is a medium where you have a set moral or you're teaching a lesson or you're being didactic. That's not what cinema is. That's not what life is.
Right.
But I feel that if these things get in it and you pick up on it through the side door and it's there if you want it, but it doesn't have to be there if you don't want it, that's cinema to me. And if someone points it out or they pick it up, it's that great thing. You respect the audience, and you also, I think, have the humility and respect yourself, not to start with a predestined, this is the lesson I'm teaching. You go, look, it's like why I love when Stephen King writes, he always says he starts with a concept or an idea, and then he just goes wherever it takes him.
Right.
And he doesn't understand writers who know the last line of the novel or write the last chapter. He doesn't do that. He goes, what would happen if a super flu killed 99% of the world, or 99 point, and that's The Stand, my favorite book of his. Yep. And then he goes from there and he does all these thematics and morals and things come out, but you never have any idea where the book's going, just like life, because he didn't. Yep. And that's what I love. So I think Children of Men is great because I think Cuarón is a good enough director. He's not hammering you that this is an allegory.
He's letting
about
it go where it's meant to go.
Yeah.
There's a great story about Pushkin, the writer, where he sent a letter or telegram or something, I forget what it was, to a friend, and he was like, "You're never going to believe what Eugene did today." And the person sent back like, "Who's Eugene?" He's like, "Oh, it's the guy I'm writing. He tried to kill himself." He's like, "You're writing it." Why are you surprised? He's like, "Oh, I just let the characters do what they're going to do." Whatever.
I love it, but George, I love that's to me, when your characters, and I'm a writer too, when your characters do something, you have a decision. Do you let them do it, or do you try to force them where you thought they were going to go? Because it might ruin the rest of your outline. But but when you're like, no, you want to do this, and I'm just a transcriber. I think that's when you write real true art.
Yeah, and that's I told Nick, because my biggest cultural thing is Shakespeare. So like I told Nick, one of the things I appreciated as I got older is that you can't identify any kind of belief or positive thing you can just cite for certain that Shakespeare believed. Right. If you find a piece of evidence that he was highly religious, you can find a piece of evidence that he wasn't. If you find a piece of evidence that he had right-leaning tendencies politically, you find evidence that he had left-wing. You can't identify an opinion of Shakespeare's. He's literally like the art was to entertain and let the characters do what they were going to do to the maximum potential, but not to guide them with any kind of message or, like you said, proselytizing.
Well, and it's that thing. It's the Zen thing. It's funny. I am a spiritual person, but I came to that conclusion on my own journey, and I've and it's still dynamic. And I've met people who are not spiritual, and I really respect them because I know they have had experiences and they are seeing things that I am not experiencing, I'm not seeing. And they're seeing atrocities and horrors and nonsensical things. And they're saying there is not, there's not an invisible hand here. There is, and I really respect it. And I feel we all see it differently. And weirdly, it's the collective consciousness that sees the whole, but none of us individually see the whole, and we have to be respectful and humble that, hey, I would just rather hear what you believe because maybe I'm going to learn from you.
Right.
And that's why I think proselytizing is dumb, because I know what I believe, so I don't need to proselytize to you. I'd rather hear from you and really listen, and maybe you're going to say something and rock my world and I'm going to change. But if all I'm doing is lecturing you, then what am I doing? I'm just relearning what I already know.
And who knows if we even know? Like in the horror side of things, I had read a hilariously titled story called Vanny Fucci is Alive and Well and Living in Hell. And the premise of the story, I think Dan Simmons wrote it, but that could be wrong. But the premise of the story was that when enough people, when a big enough block of humanity is collectively deciding they believe in something, it comes to being. So this poor guy was in one of the circles of hell because everyone believed Dante's Inferno at the time. And he was so mad at Dante because Dante just put everyone he hated in life, all his rivals, like Nick would put the landscaper into hell just for making lawn noises. It was he was just putting people he didn't like in hell when he was writing it. And the guy's like, I'm just randomly here. I can't believe it. He's like, I can't wait for all you to stop believing this so it can turn into something else. But we don't know. It's better to find out what people believe than try to tell them. I totally agree. Yeah, Speaking of believing in something, so your project is amazing. How does a person who's listening to this podcast or active on social media, or how do they support this effort? How do they follow you? How do they let people know where to go, what it is?
Well, so a number of things. So let's just get right to it. So Secret Movie Club is a community of movie lovers and movie makers. And where we've always been heading, and I hope we continue to head there, is we're going to be showing great movies. So we always want you to be able to see a great movie on film if we can get it, when we can go back to the theaters, with an audience. Because there's no better way to learn about movie making than to sit and watch, Duel. Steven Spielberg's Duel, totally. Which we watch Duel with 200 people, and you're like, oh, this is why that works. So that's part of it. Come see the great movies on film. If they're digital, we'll show them digitally. We're not dogmatists. That's one thing. And you can go to secretmovieclub.com. You can follow us on Eventbrite. Just Google Secret Movie Club and Eventbrite and follow us, because all our tickets go on Eventbrite. You'll just get notifications. Okay. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, where I think we're going to be on Letterboxd soon. So there's all that. 2, we've moved into, we're doing a Secret Movie Club radio hour. So we're doing radio narratives, and those come out about once a month because we wanted to get actors together and writers together and create during COVID. We did a 5-minute or less film festival in April, where our only rules to everybody were the movie had to be 5 minutes or less. The total budget had to be $100. So nobody was had $1,000 or whatever. And it all had to be shot during COVID, respecting the rules of COVID. So if we saw, you had 1,000 extras in Central Park, you probably didn't shoot that. And so we did it. We got 25 submissions. And so what I'm trying to get at is we're constantly trying to grow into watching great movies, so that is always going to be what we do. Creating original content. We also now are having Secret Movie Club audience members do a blog series. So we just had a Secret Movie Clubber, Mitchell Nagy, write about 2 of his favorite Japanese anime movies, Whisper of the Heart, Studio Ghibli's Whisper of the Heart, and Galaxy, I think it's Galaxy Train 999 or 999, a real early one. And, you know, I love that. Going along with what we were saying, George, if I was always just writing, it would only be my taste. Or if it was just a team of 3 or 4, we would hit a ceiling. Right. But if you write about it, I didn't know about that Hawthorne short story, Wakefield. I mean, I want to read it right now. If Nick wrote about it, you know, and he talks about, you know, having PTSD when he heard the, you know, Requiem because of episode 8, you know, that makes your world bigger. So we're having a woman write a series on Giallo. So we also want writers to write in, and we'll give them 2 or 3 or 4 blog series. We're also going to be moving into short films. We're also looking into potentially, and then I want to stop here because you also have to be realistic. We're also looking, COVID also made me realize we need a virtual component. Because our audience can only be so big in Southern California. There are only so many people. And by the way, it's not, I don't want that to sound wrong. It's not like we're selling out every day, guys. We just got to turn you away. That's not what I'm saying. I've done movies where we had 40 people and, you know, I was glad to have them. But we have people in Canada and the UK and New York and Iowa and Oklahoma who want to be part of the community. Garen is in New Orleans, you know. Yep. And, you know, they're not going to be able to come see the live stuff. So we're really trying to build up we have a Facebook group where we post deep dives into the movies and articles. We want people virtually to engage. And I think one of those things will be maybe in 2021, we'll have some kind of virtual channel, a Secret Movie Club channel, and it'll have content and movies and people can just download it and watch. And we want to grow the community in Southern California and virtually around the world.
That's awesome. And you have a podcast as well, right?
We do, yeah. It's so just Secret Movie Club podcast. It's really easy to find. Just Google that. You know, it pops up in the Google thing because when in the Google podcast, you can go to secretmovieclub.com and almost everything we do is there. So secretmovieclub.com is a great place to start because you can look at everything, and then at the bottom there are all our social media. So you can just get sent out to our Vimeo, to our Facebook, to our whatever.
Cool.
Perfect.
Very, very cool. This was amazing. We so appreciate you taking the time to do this. I can't tell you how impressed I am with the fact that this was an effort that turned into another effort in the face of the COVID thing, and both efforts are wildly successful.